Feel that it's hard to get a Maine made cheese past me. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We still have a few folks who are joining, it looks like, but they'll join in time. I want to thank everyone for joining us for today's presentation on sales and how to get more customers now. My name is Dan Reed. I'll be facilitating today. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I will ask those questions to Tom as we go along in the presentation. Or we'll have a little bit of a dialogue at the end, and you can ask questions directly. And I want to say thank you to the Maine Technology Institute, who is a huge sponsor of SCORE and has sponsored this workshop. And we really appreciate the work that they do here in the state of Maine, not only for our clients, but also for us. So I want to say thank you to them. And I will tell you a little bit about SCORE. SCORE is an SBA resource partner where we provide one-on-one small business mentoring and workshops just like this one to entrepreneurs here in the state of Maine. And that's facilitated by volunteers like Tom, who are experts in their field and willing to give their time back. And with that, I'll pass over to Tom to introduce himself and get us started here. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Dan, and thank you all of you for joining. It's I know it's a busy time of the year. We're in the holiday season, but obviously, we are starting to think about the end of this year, the beginning of next year, and someone once said to me this morning, "You can't do much in business if you don't get sales." So that's what we're here to talk about. So just a little bit about me. I've been with SCORE since 2018. So I started a consultancy practice in 2018, joined SCORE to be able to serve the community and give back and share some of my experience and knowledge in sales. But I've been in sales. I'm giving myself a little bit of a break, 25 years. But I've been in sales itself for 45 years. But 25 of those years, I was been in sales management. Leading teams across a number of different companies you might be familiar with, like Puma and Reebok. So I come from a big company background, but in the last 7 years, as I've gone into consulting, I spent a lot of time in the small to mid-sized business and startup community, helping them build their sales strategies, sales process, sales execution. Because at the end of the day, that's what sales is. It's a tactical exercise, and I know a lot of you here, are probably thinking that's the thing that challenges you most. But what I like to do in this workshop is really focus on the strategic aspect of sales. I like to focus on the process aspect and really the journey of finding that customer. And that's why this seminar is how to get more customers now. It's not about how to increase your sales now. It's about how to increase your customer. And that customer is the relationship that you have that becomes a referral partner, that becomes something that you can continue to grow and nurture. So that's why it's the title is what the title is. So first off, I'm going to start off with, and I had a breakfast this morning with a startup, and we talked a little bit about sales, and we talked a little bit about one of my part-time jobs now is I'm director of the Center for Sales Excellence at the University of New England, and we're leaning into sales, and actually we've just included a sales minor into our curriculum, and he was very interested. He's like, why are not more colleges and more people leaning into educating people on sales? And it was because everyone has this perception. A lot of people have this perception that sales is like selling used cars, and it's not. Sales is a lot more than that, and that's what we're here to do. So get that out of your head. Sales is not that. So, but sales can be scary. Right. So, you love your product. If you're into a business, you probably love the product. You love the service. You love what you're doing. You did it for a reason. You saw that there was a problem out there or a need, and you've started your business, and now you're excited, and now you've got to go sell. Well, here's some things that are really important to know. Number one, the best salesperson you'll ever hire is your biggest believer. So it's not, people can tell you, if you're in a certain business, go get a distributor. They sell everybody. But if they don't believe what you believe and aren't the biggest believer in what you're doing, they won't be effective because the best salesperson is your biggest believer. And in most cases, that's you. The second thing to realize in sales and why it's scary is the theory of SW, SW, SW. Some will, some won't, so what? And that's the resiliency you have to build in sales is that, I'm working on a startup company. I went out and made a couple sales calls today. and I got a couple of not yets, and I didn't get no's, and I got not yets, and I just have to accept that's part of the pipeline, and they will come around someday, but today just wasn't the day that they wrote an order with me. And that leads to, in baseball, the sport of baseball, if you got a hit every 10 times you go to bat, you're probably in the Baseball Hall of Fame at the end of your career. Well, in sales, it's kind of similar. I mean, most close rates I see in sales, the best cases are usually 15 to 20% of the opportunities you have. So that really tells you that, it's not about, getting more closing. It's really more about getting enough no's to get enough yeses. Because if you're only going to close 15 to 20% of your on average of your opportunities, you're going to have to make sure that your pipeline is big enough. And in working with a lot, many companies, I find that usually the biggest challenge is the pipeline isn't big enough. They're not getting enough no's because that leads to yeses. And the last thing to understand in sales is it's going to take a lot of touches. Again, I've been in sales 45 years. I'm helping this startup in sales. You'd think like I could just pick up the phone and, with all my sales magic, I'd be getting orders right away. It's taking me 12 to 15 touches to move opportunities forward. So that's something for you to understand as you go through your sales process, that it is going to take a lot of touches. Now, that's the scary part of sales, but that's also the opportunity, and that's the hope, and that's the excitement that makes sales so much fun. Because these are Gartner is one of the leading consultancy groups in sales. They do a lot of work on sales operations. But they've basically said the three top sales competencies, and this is the year 2024, is number one, the human abilities such as active listening and empathy. Now, I've been doing this for 45 years. If you told me in 1995 that the number one sales competency in 2024 was going to be empathy and active listening, I probably would have laughed. But that's it. And you know what? For many people who are starting a business or are early in their business journey, I mean, you've listened to your customers, you've listened to your consumers. That's why you've built the product that you've built. You've listened to the pain that's out there. As you go and start to sell that product and sell those services to the community, it's that same active listening and empathy. The difference here is you aren't solving the problem of the end user, you're solving the problem of the business that you're talking to. So very, very important, active listening and empathy. The second thing is the tactical flexibility, the ability to learn, to be agile and versatile. I hear a lot of, people talking about fail fast and adapt and doing a lot of A/B testing, if you will, like looking at different solutions. So right now the business, changes quite a bit. There's a great deal of economic uncertainty. So having that tactical flexibility, allows you to be agile and versatile. So as you look at tools and collateral and things that you're trying to bring in, to invest, if you're a startup, make sure you're investing in tools that give you that flexibility, because that allows you to pivot should business change. And one thing that has really changed as we hit in, to 2024, 2025, is the ability for folks to effectively collaborate, with artificial intelligence and technology to optimize tasks and messaging. And the reason I say that, so I use AI with a lot of my clients and people I work with to create multiple messages based on the customer. We're going to talk today about customer personas, the customer journey. And as you go through that, not every message is going to work for every customer you have. So an example of how I use AI is I will go into ChatGPT and I'll kind of put a framework of what I want to communicate about a certain product or a service. And I'll ask AI to create one that's humorous, ask ChatGPT to give me a humorous one, an empathetic one, give me an urgent one, and give 5 or 6 different scenarios. And then I'll take that message and I'll carve out my database along those lines and send people messages that actually, hit them where they're at, which is the empathy piece. So using the technology can be quite effective. So I'm going to try. I've tried this before, but I'll see if this can work. But I don't know if any of you are familiar with the brand Spanx. And it's basically a toning undergarment company, as that's how it started. I mean, it's much bigger than that now. It's certainly into the billions with their sales. But early on, the founder Sarah Blakely, she did a great video on how she sold Neiman Marcus. So I'm going to stop and see if I can share this. If I can't, again, I've been in the business 45 years. Sometimes it doesn't work, but let's see if I can share it so you can all see it. Here it is, and I'm going to make sure I share the sound. And let's see if this works. Got to go over there. All right, here we go.
Neiman Marcus was my first account. And two things about that are just something that I reflect back on. One is everybody in the industry after I landed Neiman's came up to me and said, how in the world did you land Neiman Marcus? And I would look at them and I'd say, I called them. What do you do? And they'd say, oh my God, we go to trade shows and we set up a booth and we've been doing it for 7 years and everybody says around year 6 or 7 that you get a chance with Neiman's. I didn't even know there were trade shows. So I often say what you don't know can be your greatest asset if you let it. If you're not intimidated by the self-talk of, I have no idea what I'm doing, and that shuts you down. So if you can power through the, I have no idea what I'm doing, and actually see it as a positive and go, that means I'm going to do it different, and that's where you break real ground. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of willingness to look stupid and potentially fall on your face, but that's where the magic is. So anyway, I got a chance to go and cold call Neiman Marcus. I flew on a plane from Atlanta, where I live, to Dallas, and I met with the buyer, and she was impeccably dressed. I'm in the intimidating Neiman's headquarters. I had my lucky red backpack from college. I had the prototype in a Ziploc bag from my kitchen and a color copy of the packaging that I had created on my friend's computer. And halfway through my pitch, I was telling her what it is, and I could tell I was losing her. You know, after 7 years of cold calling and trying to sell things to people, you get really good at reading nonverbals. And I always say nonverbals than the verbal. Nope. People sit there and shake their head and say, I love it, and I'll call you tomorrow. You're like, oh my God, Mayday. You know, that's when you pull the chute and say, I've got to like try everything. And so she was kind of doing that. She was like, okay, thanks. And I just stopped and said, you know what, Diane, will you come to the bathroom with me? And she literally was like, excuse me? I'm like, I know it's a little weird, but can you just follow me to the bathroom, and I'm going to actually show you what my product can do. I'm going to go in the stall. And she was like, oh, okay. And she walked down the hall, and I went in the stall, and I put it on under my white pants, and I came out. So I showed her before, and then I showed her with the product on, and she just sat there, and she goes, I get it. It's brilliant, and I'm going to try it in 7 stores. And I was like,
that deserves a round of applause. I love that story.
The reason why I like to share that story, because it's really effective on a number of different areas. Number one, she knew who her ideal customer was. If you're familiar at all with Spanx, I mean it's a costly, it's pricey for an undergarment, and she knew that if she could sell her product in Neiman Marcus, I mean those consumers were spending $1,100 to $2,000 on a pair of pants or a dress. If she could sell it to Neiman Marcus, she could improve she could actually prove her price value relationship and then translate that into revenue. Because if someone's paying $1,100 for a pair of pants, why wouldn't they spend $75 more for something to make those pants look fantastic? So I think that's what she's been able to do. And so she found her ideal customer. A second thing here is how creative she was. And she knew what her product was. She knew how to demonstrate it. So in many cases, she was able to demonstrate that. So it's that resourcefulness in sales sometimes that you have to be in demonstrating your product and meeting meeting the needs and the problems of your consumer. And so that's what we're going to get into as we go through this seminar. So I'm a big fan of the TED Talk from Simon Sinek. And he really talks about it, and I believe this wholeheartedly, is that why you do what you do, what's the purpose? That's the most important, aspect of your sales journey and your customer journey, is really what is your why? Why do you do what you do? What's the purpose? I always say customers buy why you do what you do. They give you a purchase order, they give you money for what you make or what you do, but they buy your why. And I've been transforming sales teams quite considerably considerably over the last few years on focusing on your why and making sure that in your sales presentation, you're focusing on that to make sure you're connecting with the customer on a personal level. So you're building that relationship and you're finding shared values and why you do what you do. The next thing I like to say, I kind of add something here. I like why, who, how, what. Why do you do what you do? Who does it matter to most? Then how do you do it? Then what you do. So if you think about how you sell, how often if someone asks you, what do you sell? And you say, I sell sneakers. Well, like I'll give you an example. I'm working on a product now, a brand now. It's called Pahi, Pahi. And it's the first athletic footwear company ever to focus on balance as a solution. So everybody focuses on, cushioning, lightweight, speed, performance. They focus on all these things, but no one's focusing on balance. And there's a large, percentage of the marketplace that as you get older, fall is considerably dangerous, considerably costly, and these shoes are really built to help improve your balance and improve your peace of mind to help avoid falls. So when people ask me, hey, what are you selling? I go right to my why. I'm selling a solution that helps people improve their balance. It just happens to be a shoe. So as I work my way through the dialogue with them, and many times I'll get people saying, I'm thinking of my mother, I'm thinking of my aunt. And so it's why, who, how, what. And I've actually shared that with many people and it works. So the why, customers buy why you do what you do. They give you money for what you make. So that is very important. So as you sit here, and if we were live, I'd probably pause the workshop and have everybody write down their whys, and your unique value proposition. And because we spend time on focusing that, because that's incredibly important. And you'd be surprised if you look at some of the most successful, companies that are emerging, successful companies that are growing and scaling. Most of them have a clearly defined why, because if you define that why, you have something that connects with your customer, so that gives you a long-standing chance to build a customer relationship. It actually improves your price value relationship because your why can match their why, and people are much more willing to spend more on something that has a shared value. And it allows you to build your brand story or your brand pitch around the things that are most important to your customer, to your investor, to whoever it might be. So really focusing on the why is extremely important. So hopefully, as I've talked, you've taken a little time to really do that. But that would be the homework from this exercise as you think about your sales strategy is first off, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? Because when you know your why, you then can know who to target. Who does your why matter to most? So if you think about Sara Blakely and Spanx, her why was to allow women the opportunity to feel better about themselves, to feel comfortable in their own skin, and to transform the way they feel about themselves. So then she focused on who that would matter to, and she figured out a customer base. She figured out who the retailers were she needed to talk to. She figured out the consumers she needed to talk to, because she figured out, who did her why matter to most. And that's why she went to Neiman Marcus first, and that's why her brand is billions of dollars. But Sara Blakely has always evolved around her why and the who. And from that, she's transformed what she makes, the product she makes. Her product line's gotten huge. But she's always stayed focused on her why and her who. And that's what matters most. So as you know your why, then you start thinking about your who. And you start thinking about finding your ideal customer. And basically, because your ideal customer, when you know your why and you start thinking about the customers where that why matters to most, now you've got a relationship that can be built that says, this is why I do what I do. This is what you all support. We have a chance to build a relationship. So in talking about my shoe company, we are just getting started and we've just signed we're signing up 60 Foot Solutions stores across the country. And they're a store that basically solves consumers' problems. They're not a very well-known shoe store, but if someone has a serious issue with their feet, they go to Foot Solutions. And so for our company, that was the first natural place to sell our product because we're a solution, they're a solution, and they are going to start our scalability because we're in the right place for our brand. So as each of you think about your own sales strategies and what you're doing, make sure you know who your ideal customers are and that you're matching your why, that your values match. And there's a couple reasons for that. Your ideal customer will not just be a good customer and a profitable customer for you. They'll be your best referral partner. They'll be someone that tells others about you. They'll tell their friends, they'll tell their coworkers. And I talked earlier about the fact that a close rate typically in sales is 15 to 20%. The close rate for a referral. So if one of your customers refers you to another customer, that close rate is over 80%. So it typically is between 81 and 83%. So as you look at your customer profile, finding that ideal customer and having them become a referral partner for you is the greatest way to market your business. So if you're into something that has the opportunity to gain referrals, I'd make the case that working on a referral system, really nurturing those existing customers to gain referrals, because those close at a higher rate, so your cost of acquisition is much lower on a referral than it is on trying to find new business. So referrals obviously are very important. So there's some exercises here as you go through and try to figure out who is my customer. And then what I like to do is start diving just a little bit deeper, beyond just the name of the customer and where they're located and sort of what they do. I like to get into their why as well. One of the things I do quite a bit with all of my clients and I do in the classroom is really building customer personas. So for all of you, if you think about it, start thinking about, those target people that you work with and build personas. You build sort of a role around them. And I have a classic example. I was working with a roofing company and it was during COVID. And obviously the roofing business did pretty well through COVID because it wasn't intrusive. The roofing team could do the work outside. And so while people did have, some extra income coming in or extra, things coming in, the roofing business was pretty good. But the roofing company I was with, we built some customer personas. So a really interesting persona we built was Hazel. Hazel was, and this is how specific we got. Hazel was a recently widowed woman in her late 60s, early 70s, whose partner and husband made most of the decisions about the house through the years, and now she's on her own, and basically she has to make these decisions herself. So how we coach the sales team is to have empathy for Hazel, to really listen, to really calm her, to really show empathy, to make sure that she was, a great potential customer. So the story here is I had one of our roofing estimators. And typical of a roofing estimator, they wear the jacket, they wear the hood because they're cold, they're outside most of the day. So his name was Dan. So Dan actually went to this woman's home, and it was a Hazel type persona. That wasn't her name, but it was a Hazel type persona. And this was during COVID. So, he knocked on the door, and she let him in. And so as they were talking, he realized, he looked around the house, saw all the pictures, and he started asking questions about her family and her situation. And she talked about it, how she'd lost her husband, how all her kids live far away, and she doesn't see him much. And they had a conversation for about 15 minutes. He basically gave her the roofing estimate and she signed on the spot, because Dan took the time to, know the customer persona, show that empathy so that this woman automatically trusted him. So building customer personas is a great way to build trust. Another thing you want to do is customer identification, qualification, and segmentation. Then you've got meeting the customer where they're at, which is empathy. And then you've got validating your UVPs to the customer. So this is sort of the customer journey that we're going to go through. The last thing is, so what, who cares, what's in it for me? So So I like starting with the customer personas because that leads to all the rest of this. But these are very important, criteria as you build your customer base. So, and empathy really is meeting the customer where they're at. That doesn't mean going to their office. That means meeting them emotionally, physically, psychologically. It's knowing them as people so that you can meet them where they're at. So empathy versus sympathy. Empathy is walking their walk. Sympathy is really, is just different. Empathy is a skill that's highly useful in sales. And what empathy does is it provides a really simple customer profile. It gets you beyond demographics to understand their behaviors, their concerns, their aspirations. It helps you understand what your customer values and is willing to pay for. It provides them value. It builds trust with them, and then it creates a long-term relationship. So as you build these personas and profiles, the idea is to show that empathy to get you to this point. So, what I wanted to kind of transition to. So once you've done all that, you've done your customer profiling, you've built the customer profile, you've gotten beyond the demographics, you've built the relationship. What you want to start doing is start thinking about a sales process. And this sales process helps you track the customer journey. So having a clear process helps you know where you are at and the probability of success. Sales process helps you manage your time and your activities so you can focus on what is important now. So what I want to do, and this is a lot of the work I do and a lot of the work I do with clients. Sales process helps you get a perspective of where you're at, so that you don't jump ahead of the process, you don't get frustrated. If you know where you are in the process of the journey, you'll have specific activities, specific actions that you take, to make that work. So I have, and I don't know if anybody has a CRM, but if you don't have a CRM, but you're working off a spreadsheet, here's some of the 7 potential stages. I have a typo, but I look at, there's leads, there's prospects, qualified leads, there's a discovery process, a capabilities process, a proposal, and then a closing. So typically those are the 7 stages. So if you had an Excel spreadsheet, it's very important to put your customers into the segment that they're at. Leads, prospects, qualified leads, discovery, capabilities. And so I'm going to go a little bit on what the difference is. So, okay. So I want to talk a little bit about leads and prospects. Leads, somebody gives you a list. So say you've got a list of, or you're going to a maker's mark, and you've got a list of people that you're doing business with. That's what I consider a lead. A prospect is when you have somebody that actually has come to you and given you their name or their number, some information. So that's how I challenge leads versus prospects. If I just have the fact that I want to call on X store, that to me is a lead. If I now know a name of the owner of that store or someone who works at that store, now I call it a prospect. And then that leads to, from my prospects, the key work that needs to get done is the qualification of those leads. And so qualified leads in discovery are really the critical stage you want to be at. So a qualified lead tells you that someone has interest or is qualified to buy what your service or purchase your service or purchase your product. So to me, this is the most critical sales stage, is that qualified leads and discovery. This is where you use empathy to make it about them and learn more about them. I am really, really strict with my sales team, is that any team I work with, before you start talking about what you do or what you make or what you provide, make sure you find what is most important to that customer. Find their need, find their pain point. Because when you do that, you can take your unique value proposition and customize it to their pain so that you're solving their problem. Because in sales, the key to sales, if you take yourself from being someone who provides a service or sells a product to someone who solves a problem and provides a solution, you have now taken yourself from a sale to building a customer. And that's probably the most important thing you go through today, the discovery. Become a solution provider, become someone who solves their problems. And someone was talking earlier, they provide, grass-fed beef. Well, you still can find there's people that might, need that or be interested in that. So you might say that isn't really a problem, but might be it's a need or it's a pain. So finding a solution to what they're looking for. Certain people like homegrown. Certain people like to buy product that they know has been, raised locally. Asking those questions and finding out that that matters to them allows you to then talk about their pain. And in most of my sales work, so many people come to me worried about the handling objection. They say, Tom, handling objections is like the thing I hate most about sales. And so what I like to say is the discovery meeting, asking the questions, finding their need, finding the problem they're trying to solve, that can help you actually eliminate the objections, because when it comes time for you to talk about your capabilities and what you can provide, you are presenting that in a manner that already answers their questions, that already solves their problem, that already addresses their pain point. So don't think of the worry being handling objections. Think about how deeper I can dive in my discovery to find their need and their pain, so that when I'm presenting my solution, I'm answering those questions. So their objections become clarifying questions, not objections. Let me just clarify. I said I said I was interested in this. You said you could do that. Can you please just give me more information on how you do that? Versus, that just sounds expensive. That doesn't sound like something I need. If you're already solving their problem, that objection becomes a clarifying question that allows you to dive deeper into your solution. So again, I talked earlier about leads versus prospects. Leads are a list of names and potential targets. Prospects are those leads who you have contact information and a way to contact. I personally consider leads more of a marketing initiative, like you buy a list or you do, Facebook ads, you find these people. Prospects to me is a sales initiative. And this is something I teach at the college, but want you all to think of. A lot of times people ask me, what's really the difference between sales and marketing? To me, marketing is one to many, sales is one to one. And as someone said to me this morning, it's like, it's kind of funny why salespeople, tend to get compensated at a pretty healthy rate, why people make money in sales. It's because one to one's hard. That means you've got to get in front of one person and you've got to learn their pain, and you've got to talk about your capabilities in a way that solves their pain. Sales. I'm not going to say it's hard, but sales is one to one. So for all of you that are looking to improve your sales and build customers, practicing that one to one. There's ways to practice the one to one. Network. Have a lot of coffees. Have meetings where you're talking to one person and you're building a referral network. You're building a community. So really practice the one to one, because that's what gets prospects to qualified leads. So a qualified lead is identified as having a need or use for your product. You've got information gathered as the decision maker. You have a realization that they buy or sell like products and meet your price value, and a sale is possible. And when a sale is possible, then your process manages probability. What I typically do in my sales process is I give percentages to each stage of the process, because if somebody's early on, the probability might be low, but if I'm in proposal stage and negotiating, that probability might be high. And I always have a saying I've used at a lot of, sales meeting, is that, you need to believe that everything is possible, but you need to manage the probable. So believe in possibility, manage probability. So as all of you, especially if you're in a startup, your early stage business, you believe in yourself, you believe in the opportunity that's in front of you, anything is possible for you. So then what you do is you use your sales process to manage the probability. So never stop believing, just make sure you're managing the process so you can get realistic expectations. So I have a system I use for qualifying leads. Yeah, and I use this with my sales teams, and I ask them, have you filled out the BANT? So it's an acronym, BANT, but it's budget, authority, need, timeline. So this is a question I ask of all the prospects that I have as they go into the lead qualification stage. Have they given you a specific budget or a price range that they could be looking at? I'll go to the next slide. Do they have the resources to pay? So that answers the questions of budget. Authority. Are you talking to the right person? So in many different organizations, you could have a gatekeeper, you could have a friend in court, you could have an influencer, and you could have the person that actually signs the purchase order. All of them are important. You just need to know in your sales journey, are you talking to the right person? So that's very important. So I have, and you could do this you could do this on a separate spreadsheet for every one of your prospects or qualified leads. Answer these questions on BANT because this helps you manage your time and manage your probability. So budget, authority, need. Have you identified their pain in your discovery? So have they told you there's a pain or there's a problem or there's a need that what you're providing can help? So make sure that. And then the last thing, and I think this is important in sales process, is timeline. When do they need it? Is it something they're talking about for next holiday, next year? When are they talking about it? So, answer these questions and ask those questions. When do they need it? So budget, authority, need, and timeline. I mean, those aspects are really good in managing your time and resources. You don't want to spend a lot of time on a prospect if you haven't answered these questions, because basically you don't know what the probability is. If you've answered these questions, back to what's important now, these are the people that you should be spending your time and energy against. So as you look at sort of your customer identification, as you sort of look at the pipeline, you've got your prospects, you got your qualified leads that have fit the BANT. Then you've got your proposals, then you've got your sales. So the one thing to note here is that your funnel of prospects needs to be bigger. We talked about a 15% close rate, 20% being good. You need to have enough people in that prospect pool and that qualified lead pool to lead you to the sales that you're looking for. So it's very, very important to get to. So as you go through sales, so you've built your why. You know who your target customers are. You've built their personas. You've put the framework of a sales process in place. You're starting to work on your BANT to know where you're at. Now you start to have meetings, and then now you're out there doing the sales calls. So first thing I'd propose, be prepared. Do your research. There's so many online tools. There's LinkedIn. There's all kinds of places, company websites that you can learn about the person that you're going to be talking to about a potential sale. So know their stuff. You should know that they're doing the same to you. They're going on your website. They're going onto your Facebook page. They're learning about you. So you need to be prepared and know about them. Number one, it shows research, it shows respect, it shows that you care about them because you cared enough to learn a little bit about them. Even little things like, oh, I didn't know you were from Gorham. I grew up in Westbrook. Oh, isn't that? We played high school, football against each other. Whatever that is, but be prepared so you can keep the conversation going. Know your customer. Know your customer. Know their customer. Know what they're trying to do. And then basically, your why, your UVPs, and how they impact the customer. I like to have anybody I'm going on a sales call to have an agenda and flow for the meeting. If you're going to be with somebody going, even to start of the meeting, thank you for giving me, this time here. I've got a 45-minute agenda. What I'd like to do is learn more about you. I'd like to share a little bit more about what we're doing can help you. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about, give them an idea of what you're going to do in the meeting. The next to last thing is know your ask. If you're on a sales call, everyone knows you're there to make a sale. So don't be afraid to make an ask. So everyone talks about closing's the hardest part. Have an ask. If you're talking to a retailer, you say you're talking to a retailer, like I'm my shoe company. I'd like you to put in 4 of my shoes at this many pair. I'm not asking for a huge commitment. I'm just asking for some representation to get started. Oh, that's realistic. I think I could do that. Instead of saying, hey, are you in? Or you're going to give me an order? Make an ask, say, is this reasonable? Is this a reasonable request? And then the last thing is follow up, do what you say you're going to do. If they say to you, that's great, can you send me a proposal? I try to get that proposal done within 48 hours because the opportunity is real. It's right in front of you. It's something that you can work on. So I try to get that done as soon as possible because you said you were going to do it. Don't wait a week. And if it is going to take you a week, say that in the meeting. Yes, I can send you a detailed proposal, but what we talked about has a lot of, some elements that I've got to work on. I will get you a proposal by next Wednesday at 3:00. So that way you set the expectation, then you meet the expectation. So set the bar and meet the bar. So, sales 101. The biggest believer is your best salesperson. And if you're a startup, that's you. Find your ideal customer and recognize who is not your ideal customer. I've had many, many startups that I've dealt with that, got all excited and got into Walmart too early. And next thing you know, Walmart gobbled them up. So know who your ideal customer is and know who can help you scale in the early term, but not every customer is equal. And sometimes, some of these complex, if you're in the consumer products companies, some of these retailers can be highly complex and you might not have the system in place. This startup shoe company I'm working on, we don't have the complexity to deal with a major retailer that needs, some of the, software integrations. We don't have them yet, so I can't go call on them. So the next thing is, walk in their shoes. So this is empathy. Walk in their shoes, solve their problem. It's very important for you to leverage your unique value proposition. Say your why. As you learn their discovery, your why, you don't have to talk about what you do, but back to that why, who, how, what. Talk a little bit about why, because they're going to say, tell me a little bit about you. Talk about your why. Don't talk about your what. Talk about your why. Know your ask. And, what are you looking for out of the meeting? And the last thing is, some will, some won't, so what? Don't get disappointed. Again, if it's 15% close rate, that means out of 100 opportunities and 100 meetings, you might close 15. So learn from the ones you don't close, but know that, you're on the path of at least making the calls. And like I say, it could take 12 to 15 touches. I was working with a client who I met through Top Gun. She basically wanted to get into Trader Joe's. It took her 78 touches to get a meeting. So don't be discouraged. SW, SW, SW. Sometimes it's the time of day. Sometimes it's getting to the right people. People don't mind persistence. They don't like being aggravated. And just a little tip is if you're talking to somebody and you're on your 15th touch, that's where I use AI. Change your subject matter, change your subject header, change your emails. Don't remind people that you've emailed them 7 times. They know they're blowing you off. So be creative in your messaging and don't tell people, hey, I sent you an email last week. They know you did. They deleted it. So always try to find ways to be creative, be timely, be humorous, because some will, some won't, so what? You've just got to make the touches, to keep that going. So create a pipeline 8 to 10 times your business need. Be ready for many touches, 15 plus. Know your ideal customer profile. Know your non-ideal customer profile. Categorize and create separate channels. Not all customers are alike, so make sure you're looking at people differently. Hannaford isn't the same as Rosemont Bakery, so don't try to treat them the same. Try to make sure not all customers are alike. And that's really what I have. So I'd love to, I try to make this 45 minutes so there's time for questioning to allow everyone to get back in their day. So any questions in the chat or any, probably the best way to do it is in the chat, right, Dan?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I can stop sharing so that way I can see everybody.
Yeah. Feel free to type them in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. We can do it that way as well. I can say that one of my favorite takeaways is when you mentioned Simon Sinek and the start with why, and kind of always reminds me why it is that I really enjoy what I do, which is helping small business owners do the things that they like to do. Yep. And I would say that's probably my why behind my business, which is in marketing.
Yeah, and my why is I wanted to make sales a noble profession. And, so that's the why I started my sales consultancy. I think, sales has been very good to me. I've seen the world, I've had some great experiences and I've met a lot of great people. So I'd like people to think that that can be noble, and that, you know, with the right strategy and process, sales can be a lot of fun. It's work, but like everything in work. And if you're a startup, in many cases, I get a lot of startups that say, I'm going to outsource sales because I really need to focus on operations. And I'll tell people, like, there's only one big believer, and that's you. And even in this company I'm in, you know, the startup, I hired some reps. They've been totally ineffective because people want to talk to the folks that started the brand, that believe in the cause the most. So I'm even finding that in my experience, and I think that you will find it as well. Your biggest believer is your best salesperson, and if you're starting a business, you're the biggest believer. So put yourself out there. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, and the founder is typically the person with the most knowledge as well.
Yeah, and they're the ones that know the why, because the why usually is a personal story. You know, the why usually is, you know, I've seen some great businesses that, the why could have been, I had this dietary restriction and I couldn't find anybody that made a packaged baked good that could meet my dietary restriction. So I basically went and did it myself and found out there's a lot of people like me, and I'm solving their problem, and my business is starting. I saw one of them at the Maine Makers Market, Thompson's Point. Her business is starting to scale because her problem was something that else others were having, and she's solving it for them.
It looks like we have a few people who've unmuted. Josephine or Hubert, do you have any questions?
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the cheese business. To a certain extent, a commodity business. You're not solving other people's problems. How do you differentiate the product in an environment like that?
Well, I guess you could say it's. I mean, from a standpoint, if you look at a grocery store, you could argue it's a commodity business, Daniel. But if you look at the rise of, charcuterie boards and the amount of money people are putting into the displays and the presentations of charcuterie boards, you look at that there is an ideal customer out there that is highly nuanced and highly specialized in curating and getting the right cheese and telling the story about cheese in their charcuterie board. So there's a customer out there for you, and it's probably a customer that can certainly scale. I think for you, it's really, who's the ideal customer that loves cheese so much that they would look for a locally produced, Maine cheese that has a point of difference, because they don't want to buy a Cabot, or they don't want to buy something that's sitting in every convenience store in the country, or every grocery store. They want to find something that they can tell a story about when they entertain. So it might be a nuanced, consumer, Daniel, but there's shops out there that specialize in that, and there's consumers out there. Take my daughter, for example. She lives in Portland, Oregon. I mean, when she entertains, and she's 36 years old, when she entertains, everything on her charcuterie board has a story. So there's people out there. So I think for you, it's finding those ideal customers, and there's a great book you might want to read, Daniel, called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
So it does talk about how you can take a commodity business, but as you transition it, find some early adopters. And I would say in this case, there's probably some early adopters for you, but it's finding those people and partnering with those people. So it could be certain stores, certain restaurants, and then getting to the right place. And then then your referral system starts to grow, because people have said, if you tried Daniel's cheese, it's a must-have on your charcuterie board. And then all of a sudden it starts to go and scale. So you're right. You're not solving a problem, but you're providing a solution to people who love cheese. So you've got to spend some time on your customer journey of finding those people who believe what you believe about the experience of cheese, and finding where they're at and getting out and meeting them where they're at, because they'll become your referral partners. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I'm impressed. Your thoughts on the referral has really made a difference for us in our startup, and we have been able to develop
Following.
referral systems that work. So that's
Yeah.
been a good way for us.
Yeah, and I've worked with a bread company that did the same thing. So yeah, everyone told everybody he's got to try his bread. So all of a sudden now he's sold out. So that can be a very good tool for you. But you got to find people who love cheese as much as you do. That would be probably your customer target. And then you're going to create personas of those people who love cheese like you do. And that would become your referrals network, and they become on social media posting the charcuterie board with your cheese on it. And then everyone's like, all right, I got to get that cheese. So
Gotcha.
all right,
Appreciate it.
good luck.
Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, in that industry, especially, every once in a while I'll travel down to Biddeford because there's a specialty cheese shop there that carries mostly New England products, and I love going down there and trying local stuff.
Yeah, it's called Nibblesford.
Yeah,
and,
Milford.
and they carry our cheese, and it's been that was a referral source from a customer.
And you'd be surprised, Daniel, I would think about in the summer asking them if you could do a activation in their store.
Would you rather
If you could be
a
in their
little
store
later than 1:30?
experiencing with cheese, because in the summertime you're going to get all that New York money from Kennebunk, all the New York money from the beach, and they're going to go back to New York City and say, I had this unbelievable cheese up at Nibbleford's. You need to carry it at this cheese shop in New York. So I think for you, as many examples as you can get of having people sample your cheese in these stores, especially in the summertime when you've got so many people from outside and you'd be surprised how many people go back to New York or Boston and tell their local shops, you got to go. I work with a mussel farm up in Islesboro, and they did the same thing. And yeah, their business. I mean, next thing you know, Ina Garten is using their mussels. So it's
Good.
funny.
Yeah.
It's funny. So yeah, so I would think for you, part of your sales strategy would be activations and experiential in-store events.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions? All right. Well, I want to thank you, Tom, so much for presenting for us today. I feel like I always learn something new when I watch your webinar.
Thank you.
Especially the new touch that you put on it with AI. I think that was great.
Yeah, I mean it's not scary. Just practice it a little bit. But you try using ChatGPT for multiple messaging to your customers. It works.
So thank you so much, Tom, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I think you're going to email the
Thank you, Tom.
presentation. All right.
Send out a recording and slide deck either later today or tomorrow.
Sounds good. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays. Enjoy your time.
Bye.
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
See ya.